What's up, everybody? How you doing? I'm here today with a young lady by the name of Irene Sotelo. I've been wanting to interview her for a while. Irene has a very interesting story, how she went to prison and why, what, and all that good stuff. We're going to find out what happened and what turned everything around. So Irene, hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hello.
Now I met you. You watched how did I meet you? Watched the show.
Comedy.
You used to go to comedy shows.
I still go every week.
You're a comedy fan.
It's my therapy.
Yeah, so she got a hold of me on, I do my Facebook Live show, and she was watching and stuff. We got to talking, and she had seen a story about this that I did about another girl named Desiree Candelas. So we were talking about that, and she started telling me her story, and her story is fascinating. It's so awesome. Anyways, before you went to prison, you were telling me that you were homeless. How did you become homeless?
Well, I lived in a home, nice home, in Bellflower with my kids and my husband. I was diagnosed with cancer. Well, during that time, I got addicted to the medication. And the medication, basically, I was an addict. Because I used to be an addict when I was younger. But when I went into remission from cancer, I was still addicted to the pain medication. Then I started getting into harder drugs. I got into meth. That meth is what took me out.
Oh, wow.
I left my home with my 2 kids.
You had cancer and you started using meth.
I had cancer, started using the pain medication.
Okay.
And then I couldn't get the pain medication anymore. But I'm basically an addictive person, so I looked whatever drug to replace. I replaced pain medication with meth.
Oh my gosh, and that's when the pain really started, huh? So what happened? What happened to meth? How did meth take you down? How fast did it take?
It took me down, I guess I was like in my early 30s when I got into meth. It took me like about 5 years before it completely took me out. Ooh. I started doing whatever it took to get the drugs. I started dealing drugs, and I started dealing enough to where I left my home to deal the drugs. This way nobody at home, nobody would affect my family, my kids. Oh. My husband left me. He took the kids, or he didn't take the kids yet. I still had the kids. I moved back home, but I stopped dealing, and when I stopped dealing, I couldn't afford the rent because my husband left. So I lost my house for 19 years, and he took the kids when I left, when I couldn't afford the rent anymore, and I ended up staying in parks. I was staying in parks. Still doing drugs, did whatever I had to take to get that meth. Wow. Living in parks, and then I started getting into trouble with the law for possessions here and there, and going to county. But county was like, it saved me a few times because it's like it was really cold outside in the winter, or I had a warm bed, food. When I get out of the county, I was still homeless, so I go back to the streets, and then you're hungry out there, so you do more meth. Not because you don't want to eat, you can't eat. But I started getting into more crimes, whatever it took, breaking into. I learned how to pick locks. So that became my thing, was picking locks, breaking and entering, commercial burglaries, and that's how I supported my high. Wow. Instead of getting a room or a roof over my head, I'd go get more dope. Oh. And the dope, the more I did, the more, it got to the point to where I had to hide from cops, so I ended up in the riverbed because people were knowing that I was doing drugs, or people were telling on me that she's the one who's got it, and I end up in the riverbed.
So you slept in a riverbed?
I had a tent out in the riverbed. Wow. And I was by myself out there.
So you were homeless, lost your family, lost your husband, all that within 5 years of using meth. Mm-hmm. Now you're living in a riverbed. So what happened when you got busted and you went to prison?
Okay, well, when out of the riverbed, it started getting too dangerous for me because I was a female out there. It was getting really dangerous. So I started trying to find other places to go, and I ended up going to a school because I didn't like sleeping on the floor and the ground, so I'd go into the playground areas and sleep in there. Mm-hmm. And so one day in Long Beach, two guys followed me in there. They beat me so bad. My eyeball was sticking out. They kicking me in the face, they cut my eye. Oh, and wow. I ended up in the hospital. My husband had to come get me out of the hospital because they weren't going to release me. He looked at me, he says, I can't take you home. The kids cannot see you like that. And he was struggling with money, so he couldn't afford a room. Oh. So he took me to a park where I was staying. He had to drop me off at the park because we didn't know, because I didn't have family. I don't have family like that.
Really?
Yeah.
You had no family?
Not nobody who took me in because I was a drug addict. And
So your own family abandoned you too?
well, I didn't go to. I was ashamed. I was more ashamed than anything.
Okay.
And plus, I had been already. I burned my bridges with a lot of them. I was doing bad.
Oh wow.
Then I ended up getting arrested. I went to the county since I hadn't been sober in over 2 years. The meth. Instead of withdrawals, I guess your body gets used to having certain things like a chemical inside it. I was in there a month and I suffered a stroke. So I was left side paralyzed. In the county, I had 3 court places. My courts were one in Long Beach, Norwalk, and Bellflower. So I was going in and out of court, paralyzed. I just wanted to get sentenced already because instead of putting me in the infirmary after I got out of the hospital from the stroke, they put me right back in general population.
So you're in the LA County jail, the craziest jail there is, with a stroke, and you still got to go to 3 different courts.
Yes.
Half paralyzed on your left
paralyzed.
side. Wow.
And they don't get help in there. Nobody wants to help you. But I was supposed to be hospitalized in the infirmary when I got out of the hospital from St. Francis. No, they put me right back in the same cell I was in when I had the stroke. They put me right back in general population, paralyzed left side, not knowing how to move or learn how to do everything I needed to learn. Luckily, there was somebody I knew that they let come to be my Sally, but it's still, going to court, she couldn't go with me. So I'd have to go through the whole process, just like everybody else. Coming back in, having to be searched the same way everybody else does.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, they make you, and it's like, I'm sorry, I'm in a wheelchair, I don't know how to use both hands, and they said you're going to either learn or you're going to have to do it the hard way in front of 50 women. And it was humiliating, it was bad. But in May, I had 18 court visits that month because I had to close up everything before I got sentenced.
18 court visits.
Yes, so it was 18 in 1 month that I had to do.
Half paralyzed.
Half paralyzed.
Wow. Now, in jail, it's hard enough surviving in jail because of the predators, and they sense weakness. Whenever someone's injured, that's what they go after. Did they do that to you?
No, because I had people who knew who I was, or just being from the town I was from.
Okay.
And just your homegirls.
But if you didn't have that, how could it have been for someone who didn't have that?
Nobody was going to push them. Nobody was going to help them.
But not only that, they're victims. They'll victimize them.
They're a victim. They would have to pay rent, basically. They would charge them just for protection. And I've seen a lot of that. I did see a lot of that.
Really?
Yeah.
They charge injured people or people in wheelchairs?
They charge anybody who's weak, not just injured people. They charge anybody who's weak for protection, or they threaten them, and they make their life hell in prison. Or in jail. This was county.
And girls are worse, but girls are worse than guys. Because I've done over 50 prisons, but I've done mainly men. But I've done a lot of the women's prisons too. But I noticed that the girls, they're pretty bad. From what I hear, I've heard other people tell me that. I didn't know there was rape in I thought when you heard rape in a women's prison, I thought it was the officers, the mill. They say women rape women, and the way they told me they do it was like, oh my gosh, that's worse.
Torture.
That's worse than a man raping a woman.
They torture them.
And they're so violent towards each other.
And the weak ones, the really weak ones, they scare them. They're crying all the time. And when finally I got sentenced to prison, and I was relieved I'm going to get the medical attention. I just wanted to get sentenced to prison. I took whatever deal they gave me, which they gave me 3 with half. And I said, it's fine, I'll take it. Just get me out of the county, because the county I was treated like a dog.
It's awful in the county.
Yeah, so finally I get to prison and have to learn everything all over again, of the people, the staff, who's going to be on your side. Before you go over the wall, you have to, and it caused enough to where, like, the anxiety was really high to where I ended up having to take supplements while I was in there, because not to cause another stroke. So, but I got the medical attention I needed. I got the therapy I needed.
Where did you do your time?
Chowchilla.
Chowchilla?
Yeah.
I've done shows in Chowchilla.
I was on the medical yard. I got medical attention day one right when I got in there. They started evaluating me. They started doing all the x-rays they needed to see what I needed. They put me in therapy within a couple of weeks. I started walking again with the walker. Got out of the wheelchair within 6 months. I still have weakness, but not as bad. And then before I got out, I gave up the walker. Right before I got out, I still had the walker to the whole prison. But because in there, having to get somebody to push you, it's further. You ain't just going in your cell back and forth. There's your whole yard, It was hard. I was determined I wasn't going to have to ask anybody for help.
Wow.
So that determination, being in there like that, is what I think made me walk again.
Now, let me ask you something. Out of all the tragedy and all this lonely, all the darkness and everything that is associated with prison life, what hurt you the absolute most out of everything?
Not seeing my children the whole time I was in jail.
Not seeing your kids, yeah. See, this is why I was asking, because that seems to be it's like no matter what these women go through in prison, not being able to raise their babies is probably the most painful thing.
My my son was already 17, my daughter was 15, they were older. But my daughter ended up homeless because her dad couldn't afford wherever he was living anymore. My son went off to, he moved in with some girl who was older than him. But my daughter, she ended up having to go stay in Victorville with somebody that she didn't really want to stay with. And I'm getting these letters, you know, telling me what she's going through and that I can't do nothing from there. And she started getting into alcohol. She got into alcohol pretty bad. And she was not even 17 yet.
Wow.
And I was worried she's going to end up getting in trouble and doing something. Because that's when I started meeting women who've been in there for a long time for a DUI. And the second one was, it was considered murder because they were drunk again because they had a first DUI. So the second time and you aim to kill somebody, it's murder. It's not manslaughter.
No.
And there's women I was meeting there were 17, 18 years old, and they were 25 to life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So those.
I've had 2 DUIs.
Well, no, but you didn't kill nobody in an
No,
accident.
but I'm saying is I could have.
Yeah, you could have. That's what was because when my daughter's drinking, I'm stressing about that. Well, from June to finally in September 8th. No, September, was it 11th, the 9/11, I had suffered a heart attack because I had such an anxiety attack.
You had a heart attack?
Yeah, because
in prison?
yeah, I had the stroke in county and I had the heart attack in prison because the meth it damaged my, the valves and arteries because of it pumping so much. It weakened them, so 2 of my arteries collapsed, and I suffered a heart attack. Got taken out, and I almost didn't make it. That's when I realized I wasn't even a person then, because I wanted them to call my family. Please call my family, my daughter. I don't want to die alone. They said it doesn't matter. You can't. We can't. If we call them, they can't come in to visit you. I was handcuffed the whole time to the bed, and so this one officer was really cool to me, and I said, "Can you please, you have a cell phone?" He said, "I wish I could," and that's when I realized I was only a number. I wasn't even a person. He goes, "You're state property."
Wow.
He straight out told me I'm straight state property. That's when I felt like I'm not even a person anymore. And that's when I got out of that, recovered from that, that's when I realized I got to do something else. If I go back out from prison, straight back to the streets, something's going to happen. I'm going to die.
Yeah, but I don't know, but it seems like the worst. The only thing I can think of is that if my 15-year-old daughter was homeless and I'm in prison and there's nothing I can do to help her except for worry and fear of what could happen to her, that would just mess me up, man.
That's what was causing the anxiety. That's what happened. I was upset, crying, not knowing, and it caused me to get too upset because I couldn't help her. I got a letter from her ex-boyfriend saying, "Yep, your daughter's out in the streets," and I can't, I write back and let me know where she's at. Have you heard from her? And letters taking time to get back and forth. So all the whole time not knowing what's going on, and finally, my son finally found her, and he took her in, and basically, he's the one who took care of her for me. But see, my son was mad at me before I went to jail, so I didn't know if he was still mad at me. I didn't have an address on him. And
did anybody visit you when you were in prison?
No.
Why is that?
Because it was too far. My kids were too young to drive out there. Money.
Yeah, but I get that a lot. The reason I'm asking is because I tell people all the time that when I go to a women's prison, a man's prison, the visiting lines are around, the cars are around like miles.
In the prisons?
Yes. And then the lines that get in there are long. But when I go to a women's prison, there's no lines. No lines.
Because it's usually the women are visiting their men.
But the men don't visit their women.
The women.
No, I noticed
and
that.
That's the difference about women being in prison with kids, losing their kids while they're in there, because the children aren't normally, when the father goes to jail, the kids go with the mom. But sometimes when the mom goes to jail, sometimes there's no father there. Or the father's in jail with the mother. They go in together. and the kids usually in with family members or some taken away. That's why I think there's not a lot of visits for the women too.